Most people think the Nag Hammadi library is simply a collection of banned Christian texts. But one of the first manuscripts from that discovery was named after a famous 20th century psychologist. Why? Because scholars realized something fascinating. The ideas inside of the ancient writings look strikingly similar to the psychological insights of Carl Jung. In 1945, a farmer in Egypt made one of the most important archaeological discoveries in religious history. Buried in a clay jar near the town of Nag Hammadi were 13 ancient manuscripts, texts that had been hidden for nearly 1,600 years. These writings would eventually be known as the Nag Hammadi Library. What made this discovery so remarkable was that these texts revealed an entirely different stream of early Christian thought, one that focused less on institutional authority and more on inner knowledge, personal transformation, and direct spiritual experience. Interestingly, one of the first complete manuscripts from that discovery was later given a very unusual name, the Jung Codex, like Carl Jung. It was named after the Swiss depth psychologist Carl Jung, whose work on the unconscious, archetypes, and symbolic transformation seemed to resonate deeply with the themes found in these ancient writings. So this raises a fascinating question. Why did scholars believe that Jung's psychology might help illuminate the meaning of the Nag Hammadi texts? And what happens when we read these early Christian writings, not just as historical documents, but as maps of the human psyche? In this video, we'll explore the surprising relationship between Carl Jung and the Nag Hammadi library, and why Jung believed these ancient texts might reveal profound insights about the structure of the human soul. I just found this out. I'm Carrie Blazer, and I'm sharing my free ebook link below if you'd like to do a deeper dive in how to transform your emotional wounds into personal wisdom. It's called My 6 Divine Feminine Self-Love Strategies. So check that out. But let's get back to Carl Jung and the Nag Hammadi library. I was in shock when I found this just a few minutes ago. I'm like, I have to make a video on this. I published my book a year ago. And I have so many Carl Jung quotes in it. My maiden name is Swiss German, like Carl Jung. My whole family is psychic, like Carl Jung's family. I love Carl Jung. Carl Jung and I resonate, agree, align on so much regarding trauma healing. And I'm the reincarnation of Mary Magdalene. Wow. Wow. Okay. Let's start with what happened, how Carl Jung got involved, and the birthday present was one of these texts. And he helped bring all of this to light, which is so perfect because early Christianity was teaching inner authority, an inner locus of control, where Christianity, as we know it, that was formed in the 4th century through the Council of Nicaea, is all about an external locus of control. But psychologists have proven that when we have an external locus of control, that sets us up for the victim mindset, codependent thinking and acting, and blaming other people for our problems. But when we have an inner locus of control, that aligns with the fact that we live in a holographic universe, that the universe is a mirror showing us ourselves in every moment as a constant feedback loop for self-improvement. And that aligns with Carl Jung's work on projection. Inner authority. Wow. Okay, I'm just excited here. Here we go.
In 1945, a farmer named Muhammad Ali al-Saman was digging for fertilizer in the cliffs near the town of Nag Hammadi, Egypt. While searching through the soil, Muhammad stumbled upon a large red earthenware jar, sealed carefully with bitumen. The jar had been deliberately placed at the foot of the cliff, and by the looks of things, had been undisturbed for centuries. Hoping for treasure, Muhammad broke open the pot, but to his surprise, he found 12 leather-bound books and part of a 13th. The texts were still visible, although they were written in a language unlike any he had seen. Unaware of the true value of his discovery, he took the books home, and according to the story, his mother is said to have used one of them as fuel for the fire. How any of these texts survived is a miracle, and from here, the details get a little hazy, but it appears that the manuscripts slipped onto the black market. It would be years until one would resurface, in the most unexpected of places. In 1951, a single leather-bound codex arrives at the C.G. Jung Institute in Zurich, Switzerland. It was purchased as a gift to celebrate the 76th birthday of Carl Jung, the famous psychotherapist. The so-called Jung Codex was studied and translated. It was written in Coptic, an Egyptian language descended from the one once spoken by the pharaohs. Judging by the style of the text, it may have been a copy of a much older work written in Greek. The book was soon reunited with the other texts discovered at Nag Hammadi, which by this point were in possession of the Egyptian government. It was not until the mid-1960s when they were released to a select few historians and biblical scholars. And
I'm going to stop it there and let's move forward to Carl Jung and get into some more detail into how all that came about. Wow, fascinating, fascinating. I mean, when I wrote my book, I didn't know I was the reincarnation of Mary Magdalene. I didn't know that yet. I didn't know I was the divine feminine. So in April of 2025, I published my book. And around my birthday of 2025, June 25th is my birthday, direct opposite, December 25th, I started accepting all the signs and synchronicities that my soul is the same soul as Mary Magdalene. But I had no idea that Carl Jung was so involved in the Nag Hammadi texts. And I have a master's degree in East Asian Religious Studies out of UCSB, a very reputable religious studies and East Asian studies program. And, but I never studied this at all. Like I had no idea, none at all. But let me share my screen and we're going to get into, with Carl Jung and the Nag Hammadi texts. A fascinating historical connection. The relationship between Carl Jung and the Nag Hammadi library is one of the most intriguing intersections between psychology and religious history, and Carl Jung does tons of work on synchronicities. This is a synchronicity because they both talk about inner authority. They both talk about how to operate your soul. Our heart is a vortex, which corresponds with the fact that we live in a holographic universe. Wow. Okay. Jung did not discover the texts, but his ideas played a major role in bringing them to global scholarly attention. In 1945, Egyptian farmers near Nag Hammadi discovered a sealed jar containing 13 leather-bound codices. Inside were 50 previously unknown early Christian writings, including the Gospel of Thomas, the Gospel of Philip, the Apocryphon of John, Dialogue of the Savior, Pistis Sophia. I mean, it's a long list. These writings belong to Gnostic Christianity, early Christianity, a mystical form of early Christianity largely lost after the 4th century. Oh, what happened in the 4th century? The Council of Nicaea, when they excluded 17 of the 21 Gospels, and then they had to be burned. Well, Constantine, then, he was creating a nation state, so he needed a religion to help unify everyone. Well, the pagans, they had a lot of different gods and goddesses. And so unifying them under one god and making it mandatory and punishing people who held on to these texts, that's a problem. Also, early Christianity is teaching inner authority. Well, inner authority and nation states, that doesn't go very well together. That's in direct opposition to one another. Jung already studied Gnosticism before the discovery. Long before Nag Hammadi was discovered, Jung had been deeply interested in Gnostic philosophy. He believed Gnostic thinkers had already explored the structure of the psyche, the nature of consciousness, the integration of opposites, shadow, anima, animus. In fact, Jung wrote in 1928, Gnosticism anticipated many insights of modern psychology. He already knew that they were connected. He viewed Gnostic myths as symbolic descriptions of inner psychological processes. Wow. One Nag Hammadi codex was named the Jung Codex. One of the most important manuscripts, Codex I, eventually became associated with Jung. It contains texts like the Gospel of Truth, Prayer of the Apostle Paul, Tripartite, I'm not sure. This codex was purchased by the Jung Institute Zurich. Because of that, it became known as the Jung Codex. Today it is preserved in Coptic Museum. Why Jung's ideas match the Nag Hammadi texts. When scholars began translating the Nag Hammadi manuscripts in the 1950s and 1970s, they noticed something remarkable. Many of the ideas resembled Jungian psychology. The Gnostic idea, divine spark within humans, the self-archetype. Ignorance trapped the soul, unconscious shadow. I mean, the Gnostic ideas, like the Gospel of Thomas, it teaches you how to operate your soul. And that's what I teach people how to do. My 6 divine feminine self-love strategies is all about how to increase your vibration inside of your soul. Awakening through gnosis, individuation. Awakening through gnosis is knowledge of the self, of your capacity to express yourself authentically, remembering who you are, becoming a mature adult with a healthy emotional range. Enlightenment is an emotion. I had to experience it 2 years ago and then do research on it to figure that out. No one ever taught me that enlightenment's an emotion. Masculine, feminine, divine pairs. Yes. Anima, animus. Yeah. My soul's name is Sophia. So Christ is the masculine opposite of my feminine. I met him in my childhood, JC. Those are his initials. He's currently the head of global security at GoDaddy. Former FBI. And as Carl Jung always says, one does not become enlightened by imagining beings of light, but by making their darkness conscious. Jung's own Gnostic writing. Jung even wrote a strange mystical text in 1916 called 7 Sermons to the Dead. He published it under the pseudonym Basilides, an ancient Gnostic teacher. The text discusses the god Abraxas, the opposites in the psyche, cosmic unity of light and darkness. When Nag Hammadi texts were discovered decades later, many scholars were shocked by how similar Jung's ideas were to actual Gnostic writings. Why Jung believed Gnosticism was suppressed. Jung believed the early church rejected Gnostic Christianity because it emphasized direct personal experience of the divine. It reduced the need for external authority and hierarchy. He wrote that Gnosticism was a psychology of early Christian centuries. In his view, church orthodoxy replaced inner transformation with doctrine. I mean, it's my contention that Christianity is institutionalized femininity. Forgiveness is feminine, compassion is feminine, nurturing is feminine. You go to church for that. And they shut down women. They told women they can't talk in the church or quiet. Communication is feminine. Well, paganism, they celebrated at the union of masculine and feminine, the divine union, the bedchamber sacrament. That was heaven. But that flies in the face of Christianity teaching the cross is the only ladder to heaven. That Christianity, controlled access to heaven, and not women, and not sex. The irony of timing. One of the most interesting historical coincidences, the Nag Hammadi texts were discovered in 1945. Jung died in 1961. So Jung lived long enough to know about the discovery, but most translations and scholarship happened after his death. Many later Jungian scholars helped interpret them. Why this matters to modern psychology. The Nag Hammadi texts strengthen Jung's argument that human spiritual traditions often describe inner psychological realities. Themes found in both include integration of shadow, awakening to the self, union of opposites, divine feminine symbolism. Yeah, and so I just did a video on was Mary Magdalene Jesus's wife? And the text in the Bible, and then the text from the Nag Hammadi library and such. But let's get into my teachings a little bit more and see where all this aligns. All right, so how does a holographic universe operate? The universe is a mirror showing me myself in every moment as a constant feedback loop for self-improvement. So this is what happens. We have our souls, and our souls communicate out through our hearts, and our heart is a vortex, so that it spins the energy out and then it hits the border of the vortex. And that's where it has an opportunity to interact with the quantum field, which is all other souls. So if let's for example say part of my soul vibrates at 40 hertz, which is selfishness. When I admit that emotion, I feel it myself out through my heart, and then it hits the quantum field. Well, other souls that also have 40 hertz will begin to move. Because when my 40 hertz move, their 40 hertz will move. And let's watch the physics experiment that shows how that's true, but this is how it works. So first we're going to see two prongs, and one prong is 512 hertz and one prong is 440 hertz. Now the 512 hertz, when that one moves, the 440 doesn't even notice, it doesn't move. But in the next example, when they're both 440, when the first one moves, so does the second. Let's see how that works. And there it is. Voila, there's the magic. When you acknowledge inner authority, my soul, and how my soul, the wounds and the wisdom inside of my soul dictate what I resonate with outside of myself. And resonate means a vibrational match, the same vibrational frequency. So in here on the left, we have the map of consciousness. Fear, guilt, and shame all resonate, all vibrate below 100 hertz. Where love, peace, enlightenment is between 500 and 1,000 hertz. Illness, cancer, viruses, bacteria all vibrate below 100 hertz. So if on the inside, I'm constantly in my fear, guilt, and shame, because you'll fear God, fear, I'll be punished if I don't obey, and I won't get to go to heaven if I don't obey. Right? But that keeps me my fear, guilt, and shame, but keeps me controlled. It's much easier to control people who are afraid than it is with people who are confident and have self-belief. So our bodies are a mirror of our soul as well. And all of those gospels teach us how to operate our soul, especially the Gospel of Thomas. There's a really great job of teaching how to operate our soul. And there's a Gospel of Mary that was found in 1897. That's Mary Magdalene. And in that gospel, it says that Jesus wanted her to take over the church as the leader. Well, that didn't go along very well with all the nation states that were being created in the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th centuries in Europe and the Middle East. So he couldn't have a woman doing that. But anyway, when we understand and accept that we live in a holographic universe, that the universe is a mirror showing me myself in every moment as a constant feedback loop for self-improvement, then and only then do we accept that our external reality is a reflection of our internal reality and not the other way around, where our internal reality is a reflection of our external reality. If we believe that, then we believe that cancel culture is the way. But let's hear what Dr. Huberman has to say about cancel culture. Then we'll go over this Carl Jung quote.
What we need to do is start to figure out how we can, I think, especially for the next generation of kids, how to teach them to regulate their nervous system so that they recognize that pulse of adrenaline as placing them in a compromised position. Like, we have to leverage the idea that being able to hear and listen hinges on the ability to be calm. So therefore, the ability to be calm is crucial to hearing and hearing and listening is crucial to our advancement as individuals and as groups. The problem is everyone's been trying to do this backwards. They've said we all have to get along. We have to cancel culture. We all have to, listen to one another. And I think, again, we have to start from the inside. We have to teach it physiologically. Now, I don't have a master plan on how to do that, but one of the reasons I'm here and one of the reasons I'm, teaching neuroscience on Instagram and not just in my laboratory is until we can learn to regulate the self, I don't think we're going to get where we want to go as a culture.
And he's right. One of my teachings is changing the world is an inside job. That's inner authority. And I'll show you the physics experiment in a second, but the higher I vibrate, the highest vibrating energy is the most transformative. Hence, enlightenment is the highest vibrating emotion, and it is the most transformative. All that goes together. But we'll get to that in a second about how changing the world is an inside job. But that's all inner authority. If the church taught everybody over the past 2,000 years that, if you want to change the world, just change yourself and your heart's a vortex. I mean, Leonardo da Vinci was studying that the heart was a vortex, but, his ideas were repressed. Then that's not unifying everyone under a single king who's also the head of the church, right? That's it. Very inconvenient to teach people inner authority, that you can all experience enlightenment, that your soul houses all of the wisdom and knowledge in the universe, that your soul is born from the quantum field. So it houses all the wisdom and knowledge in the universe. You teach people that, how are you going to repress them and control them inside of a nation state? I mean, that presents a conundrum. Let's hear what Carl Jung says. There is no light without shadow, and no psychic wholeness without imperfection. To round itself out, life calls not for perfection, but for completeness. For this, the thorn in the flesh is needed, the suffering of defects without which there is no progress and no ascent. So instead of canceling what's challenging outside of ourselves, what's important here is to understand that when I get triggered, that is my opportunity for growth. And Carl Jung says, what irritates you about others leads you to an understanding of yourself. It's always a redirect back to self. That's the inner authority. When we succumb to external authority, then that sets us up for mental illness. That's when we learn and believe God gave us dominion over the animals and land, and we engage in manifest destiny, killing 90% of Native Americans, 60 million buffalo, hundreds of millions of beavers, salmon, otters, wolves. We destroy all the keystone species and destroy the Earth's natural ability to stop flooding, stop drought, stop wildfires, to have clear water. But that sounds like the feminine, right? Animals, thinking of Snow White, intuitive, speaking to the birds. The land and the animals, that's Mother Earth. So men are in charge of women? That's the patriarchy. Now they want us to go back to Christianity like that's the solution? No, I don't think so. I don't agree with that. Let's go to another Carl Jung quote here. Yeah, this is my favorite quote. One does not become enlightened by imagining beings of light, but by making their darkness conscious. And I always thought, I'm like, is he talking about Jesus? And I had no idea until today that he's so closely connected to the early Christian texts. So let me share. This is a chapter in my book. In my book, I go over my healing journey, and it starts 10, almost 11 years ago on my 45th birthday when my mom passed away. And that was the day that my intuition told me, accept your intuition and heal from your childhood trauma. And I had projected my problems onto other people my whole life. I had no idea that I was the source of my problems. I blamed everybody else for my problems, external locus of control. But my whole healing journey and becoming in alignment with Carl Jung, that's why he's all over my book, is that the internal locus of control, that my internal reality is reflected externally. So when my house is a mess, my heart is a mess, and that's totally true. My house is clean now, and I've cleaned up my heart. So my second and third heroes are Justin Waller and Andrew Tate. So I had a rape wound from my childhood. So I attracted in. Then I had a wound that I'm replaceable in my sacrum. No one's replaceable. The universe is a mirror showing me myself in every moment as a constant feedback loop for self-improvement. And I had a fear of all men that I only found a year before I reached out to Justin when I was 52. So anyway, the men in my book were a great mirror for me, showing me my challenges, because I never went on a date with any of them. But if they're not asking me out, if things aren't moving forward, then I got things to work on. And so because so many people get triggered by Andrew Tate, I thought that this was a perfect quote for this book, for this chapter in the book. If you imagine someone who is brave enough to withdraw all of his projections, then you might get an individual who is conscious of a pretty thick shadow. Such a man has saddled himself with new problems and conflicts. He has become a serious problem to himself, as he is now unable to say that they do this or that. They are wrong and they must be fought against. Such a man knows that whatever is wrong with the world is in himself. And if he only learns to deal with his own shadow, he has done something real for the world. He has succeeded in shouldering at least an infinitesimal part of the gigantic, unsolved social problems of our day. Wow, thank you, Carl Jung. Oh, and let me find that other. I'm going to show you the this other one. Hang on. Here it is. Okay, so this is the 5 metrodome experiment. Let me make it bigger again. And we're going to see that when the metrodomes are going fast, the second and third metrodome are going the fastest, and the other 3 naturally align with them. And the wisdom says you're the summary of the 5 people you hang around most. So make me one of those 5 people. Read my free ebook. Hang out on my YouTube channel. If you want to get my book too, you can do that. But the more you spend time in my energy, the faster you will heal from your wounds, because all of my work will just naturally help you. I'm one of the fastest moving metrodomes. Okay. And there it is. It just happens naturally. It's amazing how it happens like that. We just align naturally based on the vibrations of our soul, of our energy bodies. And physicists have proven that we have energy bodies. And I'll quote Einstein, who was also Swiss German, like my last name, my maiden name, like Carl Jung, Swiss German. The field is a soul governing agency of the particle. The field meaning the energy field of the soul, the particle meaning the body. Did you know that blood flows in the embryo before the heart was formed? So why are we teaching kids that heart is a pump, external locus of control? Oh yeah, the heart just pushes everything through. Our bodies are just a machine. Even though Leonardo da Vinci 400 years ago was studying that the heart is a vortex. You can't command a vortex, like you can't command a black hole. So you're direct with the mind, you're coy with the heart, hence all the signs and synchronicities. Signs and synchronicities aren't direct, they're coy. Anyway, I hope this gave you some food for thought, and I'm going to keep doing a deep dive into Carl Jung. I mean, what? Just what? He's all over my book, and I didn't even know. But he's the man, the myth, the legend, Carl Jung. All right. Well, if this resonated with you, please subscribe. Thank you very much for listening. Bye.